glad you're with us for the Retirement Education Hour. Hi, everyone. Megan Mozak. I'm back in the studio, as always, with financial instructors Kirk Cassidy and Dr. Paul Metler. We have a fantastic show for you today. And as you know, if you're a regular listener to our program, it's centered on education. We want to take this complicated, complex topic of retirement planning and help you understand it bit by bit, topic by topic and section by section. Of course, this is what the Retirement Education Foundation's mission is, and they make that clear in the fantastic courses. These are like master's level courses that they have for you in your community, held at major colleges and universities. We're going to tell you how you can attend, how to reserve your seat before those fill up. But first, we want to get into a topic that is more important than ever to face. And sometimes, you do have to face the music, Kirk and Paul. And in this case, we have to admit that when it comes to retirement planning and this pivotal moment in our lives, ignorance isn't bliss. And there's a number of reasons why. Let's talk about that today.
I love it. So it's the old saying, you don't know what you don't know. And we recognize the majority of our audience. We know who listens to our radio show, the Charities Radio Show. We know who attends our 8-hour courses in the universities. We know who's consuming our content. They tend to be very, very successful people. In fact, we have some really interesting data that we share in the class about who really participates with the foundation's education that we provide. And we know that most of you that are listening with $700,000 to $20 million saved. We know you're highly educated. Most of you have somewhere in that $2 to $10 million range, $1 to $10 million range. And you guys have a lot of great knowledge. But what you don't know will hurt you because you don't know what you don't know. And so today's class is ignorance isn't bliss, especially when it comes to retirement planning. But we're going to dig deeper. It's not so that you can do this yourself. It's so that you can find the right teams to help you. But you don't have the right information to even go looking for the right teams or know if you have the right teams. So today, we're going to focus on making sure, really, the focus like every day is to convince you to attend one of our 8-hour courses. The charity was founded over 10 years ago, and we've taught over 10,000 people now in our communities, and we teach them at local universities wherever you live. And in that 8 hours, almost master level course, we're going to provide you the knowledge to help you avoid being a victim of fraud, to help to know what teams you should be looking for, to know if the teams are giving you, the advisors, your CPAs, your attorneys, all of those are actually giving you advice that is specific for you or if they're generic. Like, did they really map out a 30-year retirement plan for you? And not in a software program like eMoney or Money Guy Pro, but a real program, Paul. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I mean, I love this topic. And I love the idea that, we're bringing in the concept of ignorance and bliss, because in so many aspects of our lives, right, sometimes it'd be nice not to not know everything. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. But in this topic, it really isn't. And, we're going to get into this in more detail. I'll tell you, Kirk, when I was doing some research on this, I was a bit blown away by some of the things that, we talk about fraud, right? We talk about the impact on older adults, but the numbers are horrible and the risks are significant. And I think this is a great show. I really think it will be helpful.
I know one of the things that triggered you here, Paul, to come up with the content for today's show was a client who had a spouse that just refused to engage in the education in our private practice, right?
Yes.
And
yes,
again, sort of that ignorance is bliss for that particular person. And that leads to a lot of problems because we don't know how long that spouse who is that's responsible is going to live. And that leads to a lot of problems. So throughout the show today, we're going to talk about many of the things that we think you guys are misinformed or missing to help you to find the right teams to help you. So if you'd like to sign up for one of our 8-hour courses, you can go to retirementplanningedu.org. That's retirementplanningedu.org.
Kirk, I'm glad you brought that up. I wasn't going to bring it up, but you're right. The sort of the motivation in part for the show was that experience. And if I could just say, with that interaction, I felt like I was more invested in this person getting educated than this person was. And this was a married couple, and the husband was the one who always took care of the finances, and she didn't. And she just felt like she didn't need to know anything. And, we're going to get into the problem with that, that mindset. But at the end of the day, bad things happen when you are ignorant. They just are when it comes to finances. Bad things happen to people as we age when you have no idea about your financial life. And the purpose of this show is to help people so they're better protected. We're trying to protect people from bad things happening. That's the whole goal of the show and the class, is to protect people from making huge mistakes. So ignorance is not bliss when it comes to retirement planning, and there's so much knowledge that needs to be gained.
It's funny, Paul. So 10 years, over a decade, 10,000 people we've taught. One of the common things that we recognize is there is this segment of people, usually in the 2 to, and I'm just making a number up, it's 2 to 7, 2 to about $7-8 million range, that they're not ignorant. They're very informed. They're very smart. And those people are the ones that are most likely to be taken advantage of, particularly by people in our industry, because they're overconfident in their knowledge. And the reality is you know nothing. I'm telling you, you know nothing. No matter what you think you've read, what you have been is manipulated and conditioned to believe you think you know what's going to drive success in retirement. And we find this consistently year after year, thousand people after thousands of people, the constant mistake of overconfident people who've done well not having the retirement they should have and being taken advantage of and buying the wrong investments and the wrong products. And it's consistent. And that's why it's 8 hours. The classes are 8 hours. It's almost the master's level course. That's why they're taught at the University of Michigan, Eastern Michigan University, Michigan State University, the Novi and Troy campuses, Oakland University, the University of Missouri, Columbia College, many other universities to come. That's why these classes are taught for you $1 to $20 million families. Please make a $29 donation to charity. All proceeds going to Alzheimer's through the end of the year. If you'd like to register, go to retirementplanningedu.org. That's retirementplanningedu.org. Thanks for listening to the Retirement Education Hour. Be sure to follow or subscribe when listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And now back to the show.
Get back to our show now, and great topic as we're talking about ignorance. And ignorance is not bliss. I'm quickly learning when it comes to retirement planning. We have to face the music. If we don't, there are several risks that will approach us, and none of us want that. We believe you deserve a great retirement, and therefore we have to get educated and understand those risks. So I want to get back into this with you. And Kirk and Paul, you've made it clear over the years on this program that it is so important that couples are on the same page. Now, I'm married, and I can tell you that my husband and I, we're not always on the same page with everything. But you say there's a lot at stake if you're not on the same page about this. Give me some examples.
Well, Megan, again, right, we're a charity. We've taught over 10,000 people in university settings these 8-hour courses. And so one of the consistent things we see, particularly with the baby boomer generation, particularly with that generation, is one spouse is responsible for the finances and the other is not only not responsible, often not engaged. Especially in that $1 to $20 million families, we see this a lot. And this is so problematic on so many levels. And so one of the things that we encourage people when they come through the course, we talk about it frequently throughout the 8 hours, is this is a two-player sport now. Like, one spouse being responsible for the finances to get us to this point, for some of you have worked great, and that's worked out. But once you approach retirement and you start to age and things cognitively start to change and you become more vulnerable. And often with baby boomers, it's the man who's responsible for the finances. I'm just saying what the data tells us. And the data also tells us they're most likely to die before the woman. And so what we're doing is we're setting them up for so many problems as people age and get sick without having both spouses engaged. And I know Paul has a lot to say about this, but I'm telling you guys that friction in the marriage, spending patterns, and often it's the one that's responsible for the finances are more frugal than the other one, and the other one doesn't understand why. And what this education often does is it helps you meet in the middle, because the frugal one is still serving money and doesn't realize they can spend more, and they're just acting off of habit and behavior and fear that the industry has convinced you to spend less in retirement. And the other spouse has a better appreciation about what it's going to take, and if there's a long-term care event, and if they have healthcare events as they get older. So it brings them together, helps the marriage. But Paul, what I think is fascinating is why do we have so many spouses literally fighting and unwilling to participate at this point in their lives, even knowing that they're getting older and one spouse could predecease the other?
I think it's a double-edged sword. We teach these classes at major universities, right? And the people who attend our class are smart people, right? People are listening to the show. You are smart. You're educated. You're knowledgeable in your profession. And none of us like to feel shamed or embarrassed that we don't know something, right? None of us. So I think there's a certain trepidation. I think there's a little anxiety for some people who aren't used to this topic, who haven't been doing it in their marriages, who don't know a lot about finance. They're a little intimidated by coming to a finance class. I think people are afraid they're going to somehow get caught, that they're going to be exposed. So, they're nervous. And as a result, avoidance it makes you feel good. You don't have to face it. But here's the reality. The course is not to make you feel bad. We're not sitting here cold calling people in the class. You can literally be there and absorb whatever you want to absorb. You learn some things, but no one's going to know what you don't know. This is not a time to avoid. This is not a time to run away. This is not a time to pretend like everything will be okay. While we understand, appreciate why it can be intimidating, it's really important that you face this and you gain the knowledge you need. And both of you need to understand. If you're married, both of you need to understand.
Paul, there's so many things, whether it's financial elder abuse, which I know we're going to do a segment on. People are going to be shocked. And no, everyone doesn't think it's going to happen to them. But 1 in 4 of you it's going to happen to. And the data we give you, who's doing it, is going to blow you away when we talk about that. There's tax issues when one spouse, there's so many decisions that have to be made financially when one spouse gets sick, becomes incapacitated, or dies, or cognitively just slightly impaired. The other spouse has to come in and make decisions. And this is a time in life where you both need to be educating yourself, preparing for the aging process. Ignorance is not bliss. I know it can be intimidating. Look, Paul is a doctor of psychology. There's a reason he's part of the charity, and it's a lot of this is behavioral around your money as you age, and that's one of the things we're going to teach you about in this course is how can I spend more? How can I retire sooner? How can I pay less taxes? How can I have less fear and anxiety as I age? That is why it's an 8-hour course. Again, it costs $29 to attend this 8-hour educational course, and that $29 goes to charity. Through the end of the year, all the tuition is going to Alzheimer's. So we encourage you to register. Or to learn more, go to retirementplanningedu.org. That's retirementplanningedu.org. Listening from outside Michigan or Missouri? We stream courses live from the university so you can attend anywhere in the country. Go to retirementplanningedu.org. That's retirementplanningedu.org to sign up. And now back to the show.
We've been talking about the fact that when it comes to retirement planning, ignorance is not bliss. And this is very true when it comes to fraud. Kirk, you touched on this earlier, and I want to zero in on this because there's a lot to know. A lot of people think, oh, this can't happen to me. You'd say otherwise. Give us some info on this.
Well, I'll share some of the data, and then I'll let Paul share some of the data. Really, Paul can talk a little bit about the behavioral aspects of this because this is an area where it's ignorance is bliss. And also being naive to think that it's not going to happen to you is very, very, very dangerous. The data tells us that 1 in 4 of you will become victims of financial elder abuse. 1 in 4 as you age, over the age of 70. 1 in 4 over the age of 70. And I think the number was, Paul, last year, $28 billion was lost to financial elder abuse. I'm going to leave some of the who's doing the financial elder abuse to Paul, because I think that's going to blow a lot of people away. But one of the things that we spend a lot of time in the class is the importance of finding a team, but not just any team, the right team. That's why it's such a big part of our 8-hour course. I think it's the last 45 minutes to an hour is how do you choose an advisor? I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. How do I choose a team? How do I know how they're getting paid? How are they regulated? How do I do background checks? What specific questions can I ask to weed out the sizzle, the marketing? Paul, it's remarkable, and maybe this is a whole other segment, but when I go to conferences, how the conferences are about you aren't a financial advisor, you're not a CPA, you are now a marketing firm or a media firm trying to promote and sell things. And so as you age, you become more vulnerable to being taken advantage of. And as you get older, by trying to do things yourself, you're more likely to make mistakes and cause a lot of... I know people think they can do this themselves, but when they come to the 8-hour class, they will recognize they can't. But then the next and most important thing is, if I can't do this myself, what type of team should I be looking for and what should I be asking? Because if you don't get the right team or you try to do this yourselves, 1 in 4 of you are going to be victims of elder abuse. And Paul, give me some more data around that. It's crazy. How much of it goes unreported and why does it go unreported?
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole show on this. You know, I think surprisingly, most people won't believe this, but most of the elder abuse is actually committed by family and friends. I mean, it's remarkable. 6 out of every 10 cases is committed by relatives. 3 out of every 10 is traced back to friends, neighbors, sometimes home health care aides. These are, and of course, none of us think that our family and friends, neighbors, people who are supposed to be taking care of us will ever hurt us. And it's not always done purposefully. It's not always done with the intent that's malicious, but doesn't mean the impact isn't harmful, right? So we know that family, friends are the biggest cause. We know that billions of dollars are stolen from older adults. We know it's on the rise. But I think, the biggest challenge with this is, again, it goes back to this sort of shame issue, right? People are none of us want to admit that we're vulnerable. None of us want to accept as we age, we become more vulnerable. So again, I think we sometimes avoid, put our heads in the sand. And one of the things, Kirk, if I can just say, one of the biggest issues is people are often taken advantage of and never report it because they don't want people to know. They're afraid that they're going to be embarrassed. They're afraid their rights, their freedom, their kids are going to say, okay, we're going to take your computer away. They're afraid bad things are going to happen, so they don't report it, and it just perpetuates. It's a serious problem, and it becomes even bigger if you're married and one of you will die first. And as you said, Kirk, often it's the man. The risk increases when the surviving spouse is alone and knows nothing about finances. And all of a sudden, they're even more vulnerable. And the greatest, when we look at what are the biggest frauds that happen, it's investment frauds. It's people trying to get you to buy things that are not good and that can hurt you. And if you know nothing about your financial plan, you're going to be more vulnerable to these threats.
Perfect. Boom. Nailed it, Paul. Because that is one of the major reasons over a decade ago we started this charity, right? And it's why such a large part of this course, this charity teaches, is how do you choose the right team? A lot of you that, especially I said that, that $1 to $8 million family that thinks they got it all figured out, by the time you go looking for help because you're starting to have issues, it's too late. It's often too late. That's when you get taken advantage of. You got to do it now. So that's one of the things we're going to teach you. How do you find the right teams to avoid being taken advantage of as we age? You got to find them now. So if you'd like to register for one of our 8-hour courses taught at most universities in your area, all you have to do is make a $29 donation to charity. And that donation right now through the end of the year is going to the Alzheimer's Foundation. So if you'd like to register, go to retirementplanningedu.org. That's retirementplanningedu.org.
Classes are forming now. Go to retirementplanningedu.org to register. Again, that's retirementplanningedu.org. Use the promo code PODCAST to receive 50% off your tuition. And now, back to the show.
And I want to get back to this topic today. We're learning a lot about why we have to face the music in retirement planning and why there's so much at stake. One of those things, when we talk about ignorance versus not knowing what you don't know, really it could prevent you from aligning with the right team, the right experts, the right people to help you plan your retirement. Let's talk about that risk.
Well, that's a huge one, Megan. I mean, honestly, that is the number one focus of the charity. I mean, the industry as a whole is totally conflicted when they help you as a retiree. They are, whether a fiduciary or not. I mean, this is the thing we teach you in the class, and it all makes sense to you. Remember, and we say this all the time on the show and at the class, the less you spend in retirement, the longer you work and the less you spend in retirement, the more the financial service industry makes because they're managing more of your money, more of your wealth. That is the whole concept of protecting your principal. Yes, when you are the average baby boomer who retires with only $200,000 saved, that's the average baby boomer, $200,000 saved. You need to protect your principal. But when you've got 2, 3, 10, 8, 15 million, you don't need to protect your principal. The 4% rule does not apply to you. You guys should be spending, if you do it properly and find the right teams, at a 6, 7, 8% year withdrawal rate. And I'm not suggesting that's what you're going to earn with your investments. It has nothing to do with your investments. This is the whole purpose of our charity, of the 8-hour almost master level course. We've taught over 10,000 people this lesson, and it has changed all of their lives. You need to come to this class because by choosing the wrong teams or taking the wrong advice, you're going to be doing things you shouldn't be doing. Right now, the hot thing to talk about is Roth conversions. And for some of you, Roth converting makes sense. For some of you, not Roth converting makes sense. I can tell you 9 out of 10 people we meet. First of all, if you have to go to your advisor to tell them a strategy that you would like if you have to go to your advisor and say, I would like a retirement plan, you're with the wrong advisor. They should have given it to you a long time ago. If you have to go to them and say, I'd like to Roth convert, you're with the wrong advisor. That should have been mapped out a long time ago based upon a plan. If your CPA is telling you to fill a 22% bracket, run. Or fill the 24% bracket, run. The class is going to teach you how to determine whether you should be Roth converting and how much you should be Roth converting. It is a math problem based upon a 25 to 30-year retirement. What your total taxes are going to pay over that 25, 30 years, factoring for net present value, there's a tremendous amount of math that's involved. And when you come to the class, what you're going to learn is whether your team can do this exercise or not. And then you'll know if that's the right team or you need to go on to another team. And if you find the right team, Paul, let me rephrase. If you have the wrong team, you'll work longer than you need to. You'll never feel confident about retiring. If you find the right team, you will be confident. that you can afford to retire because they're going to map out 25, 30 years with all the risk mitigation tools possible, showing you if this happens, then you have this. If this happens, you have this. If this happens, you have this. All of you are buying the wrong products. If you're buying annuities, I'm going to tell you, 96% of you wasted your money. It's not the product fault. It's because no one built you a plan to identify exactly when and how to use the hundreds of annuities that are out there. Are your teams really analyzing all those? I can tell you more times than not, they're not doing that analysis. So you're going to underspend, you're going to work longer, you're going to have more anxiety and fear. Paul, I know I took most of the segment. I'm sorry. Jump in for a couple minutes here.
Well, I think what you said was right on. I mean, I think it's really hard for consumers to figure out how to pick the right advisor, because if you Google retirement planning advisors, everybody thinks, every advisor out there from every firm says they do retirement planning. Everyone. Folks, nobody can be an expert on everything. I don't care what profession you're in. So if you're sitting down with somebody who's saying that they help everybody from, young teens all the way through older adults, there's no way they could be an expert on it all, right? So the beauty of the class is that we spend a whole segment walking through how do you choose the right advisor. What are the things you should look for? And the right advisor we're talking about for retirement planning, not the right advisor for everybody, but the right advisor for those people who are 5 to 10 years or in retirement. And we spend a whole segment on it. And I think it's maybe one of the best parts of the class.
Paul, most of the people that you are listening to on the radio, exception of obviously us, we're a charity, but most of the people you're listening to on radio that's doing those paid for TV programs are insurance salespeople. 75% plus of what they sell is insurance, annuities, fixed index annuities, safe money strategies. Folks, you have no idea that. And we're going to teach you to know if that's the case. There's so many things you're missing. Just do yourself a favor. You $1 to $20 million families, go to this 8-hour course. All we ask is for a $29 donation that goes to charity. If you'd like to register at retirementplanningedu.org. That's retirementplanningedu.org. To find our latest white papers and webinars, go to retirementplanningedu.org. That's retirementplanningedu.org. And remember to subscribe or follow wherever you listen to your podcasts. And now back to the show.
We've been talking about ignorance and mostly how ignorance isn't bliss when it comes to this topic of retirement planning. So many people out there, Kirk and Paul, especially as they get closer to retirement, they think investing, it's all about performance. But you say not so fast.
So two things. One is I want to apologize for last segment. I got pretty amped up and excited because I'm very passionate about people just with either doing it themselves or the wrong teams, and they're working longer, spending less, paying more taxes. And I get really worked up, and you'll see it at the class as well. You won't be bored. I can promise that 8 hours will fly by. But I think this is another area I think goes hand in hand. If you're focused on, or the teams you're working with is focused on what they're investing in, they're bragging about the investment strategies or their asset allocation strategies, or they're bragging on performance, or focused on, when to sell, when to hold. That is nonsense. That's nonsense in general, but particularly, it's the whole scam the industry creates. Right, Paul? They just buy the index when you're a kid, and you'd have been much further ahead than you are, than all the advisors and different people that manage money out there. You'd have been further ahead just buying the index. But setting that part aside, particularly in retirement, what will drive performance, literally drive performance, real return, not average returns that the industry likes to manipulate with you, but the real returns, what's going to drive real returns is when you retire, is where you take your income from during different market conditions. Okay? Our course, our class teaches, we have a strategy. It's trademarked, everyone. It's called, because everyone's stealing the charity's information, dynamic income strategies. It's to manage It is to manage sequence of returns risk. So how do you drive real returns? How are you able to take 6, 7, 8% withdrawal rates? Is by making sure we do not take withdrawals from accounts when the markets are down. So we cannot take withdrawals when the markets are down, and we cannot rebalance a portfolio until your portfolio regains any losses it's experienced. Therefore, when we have market volatility and poor market conditions, I have to have pivot accounts that are not correlated to the stock market, meaning when the market's down, I have to have an account I can pivot to that has very little to no volatility so I can take income from those accounts. And then when the markets recover is when I will take money from my market-based accounts. And that's when the market recovers, when we will rebalance the portfolios. So we're going to teach you this in the course, not to do it yourself, but to know whether or not the teams you're working with are doing this kind of income planning and asset allocation planning, not talking about their proprietary strategies or their algorithms or their momentum trades. That's all nonsense for retirement. Real return will be driven by eliminating sequence of returns risk.
You know, Kirk, I think this is one of the places. I'm sorry?
I said I was hyper and amped up again.
No, you're good. You're good. I think this is one of the places that help. You know, if you're listening, this is one of the ways you can differentiate whether your advisor really specializes in retirement planning. I think this topic really differentiates the difference between advisors who focus on retirement planning and advisors who are really accumulation experts who are really focusing on, helping people while they're working. If your advisor is focusing on returns and not looking at sequence risk, not talking about pivot accounts, but only focusing on maximizing growth investments to make sure you are getting the most growth without thinking about how you're taking distributions, then you know for sure that advisor is not an expert on retirement planning. And in the class, we really explain how to differentiate these two types of advisors. And this is the way you can figure out whether you're with the right one and not with the right one.
A 60-40 portfolio is not it is not a retirement specialist or a retirement allocation. That's irrelevant. The 60-40. By the way, your risk tolerance is not very important in the grand scheme of things. If you have the right team that educates you and makes you feel comfortable, the plan should dictate how much risk you should take. And it's really, you have different risk profiles for when you're going to take those dollars. And you always have to have, what if we have so two things. One is, on average, since 1980, the market has seen a drawdown, a loss of greater than 14% on average per year since 1980. So we're going to have volatility. So we have to have places to take income from when the markets are down, because we cannot lock in those losses. Markets are positive 78% of the time. So markets usually end up doing well. But we do have volatility that we have to manage to generate the best real returns. And then if we have any sort of sustained market event, any lost decade like we saw in the 2000s, if we had any sustained, we have to be really cautious. We can't auto rebalance. We do not want to sell anything that is equities based when the markets are down. We want to wait for the markets to recover before we rebalance. So you better have pivot accounts. You have to have accounts to go to. So folks, if you come to the class, it will change your perspective. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to live on so much less than you should live on and pay so much more in taxes than you should pay. You're not going to read your way through this. Okay, so please attend one of our 8-hour courses. All you have to do is make a $29 donation to charity. If you'd like to register, go to retirementplanningedu.org. That's retirementplanningedu.org. Thanks for listening to the Retirement Education Hour. Be sure to follow or subscribe when listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And now, back to the show.
We've been talking today about ignorance. Ignorance is not bliss when it comes to retirement planning. There's a lot to know and a lot at risk if you stick your head in the sand. You know, Kirk and Paul, I've heard today it's important that we face the music, that we know as much as we can. And there is an antidote to all of this, isn't there? Tell us about your view of planning.
Well, the antidote is education, in which you'll learn at the 8-hour course. And a couple things really quickly. On that 8-hour course, people are like, what do you teach for 8 hours? First, I can promise you, you can tell I'm a little animated and passionate about this topic. I'm one of the lead instructors. We'll have CPAs there. We'll have attorneys there. We'll have doctor of psychology there who also is in the financial service industry as well. So it is 8 hours. I'm going to tell you, it moves really fast. The charity makes a guarantee that if you attend this course and it doesn't significantly change your retirement, we will make a $2,000 donation. The charity will make a $2,000 donation to whatever other charity you wish. So we teach, and oh, by the way, we couple options. They're either 2 days, 2 evenings, I should say, 4 hours per evening, or a 1 full day, 8-hour course, typically on a Saturday. A full 8-hour course on a Saturday. It's a lot of information. It's like a master's level course. I'll prepare you. We also stream these classes live from the university. So wherever you're at in the country, because we have tens of thousands of listeners now listening to on podcasts across the country, which is awesome. So it comes down to planning. And so at the end of the day, what you're going to learn, you go to our charity's website, you'll see a sample plan webinar. I think it's 30, 40 minutes long. We talk a lot about what that plan is, what it takes to create that plan. The plan that we're going to teach you about takes CFPs, CPAs, attorneys to design that plan. It took them 50 to 100 hours, running hundreds of iterations to find the single most efficient path through your retirement, particularly from a tax perspective, running all the iterations to find the most efficient, that you're going to pay the least amount of taxes throughout your lifetime. It also is going to create all sorts of stress tests or stress situations. So one spouse predeceases the other spouse. What happens to the surviving spouse? None of you probably even know that you go from married filing joint to a single taxpayer when one spouse dies, which means, by the way, you're going to have less income when one spouse dies, and you're going to pay significantly more taxes. And most of our listeners between $1 and $20 million are going to be paying a lot more money for Medicare when the first spouse dies, because means testing goes from married to single. There's all kinds of traps that we test for. We teach you risk mitigation strategies. We teach how do I aggressively spend down my principal but protect ourselves against a long-term care event later in life. So we teach you all these strategies, and the reason to teach you these strategies is not so that you can go recreate it, because you can't. As you are aging, there's no way you can recreate this plan and then implement this type of retirement plan. You can't. If you want to do it yourself, just live on the 3 or 4% that every book will tell you to do, and you'll be fine. But if you want 6, 7, 8% withdrawal rates, so you can live on double the income and pay significantly less taxes, you're going to have to find the right teams to help you, the right teams. And so this course is going to give you a better understanding of the levers that drive a true retirement plan, so that you know if those teams that you're working with or you're going to hire actually, do they just talk about these things, or are they implementing them within a plan? Now you're going to know if it's sort of sizzle, BS, or if it's real, because you're going to understand all the different levers. You're going to see what it looks like. You're going to understand the right questions to be asking to see if they're just throwing your plan in the eMoney or Money Guide planning software, or are they really running the hundreds of iterations to find the most efficient plan for you? Paul, I took most of the time. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, it's okay. It was perfect. You know, if I could just add one thing. I think the best part of the class is how it's structured. And this is a change that was made a little while back, where we start the class actually showing people a plan. And so all of you who are listening will be able to look at the plan that we're showing you, which is a real plan. And then you go home and look at the plan you have, which you're going to see obviously is not what we're showing you. And then throughout the whole class, we then teach you how to basically, what's behind the scenes. How do we build that plan? And at the end of the class, we show you the plan again, but now you have more knowledge and more information to understand it better. I think the format really helps, because I think people really walk away and really can understand the difference between what they've been told is a plan versus what is a real plan.
That's perfect. So, to attend one of our 8-hour courses over 2 evenings, 4 hours each evening, or a full Saturday, all we ask is a $29 donation to charity. And we are going to take that donation, and through the end of the year, we're going to donate it to the Alzheimer's Association. So, if you'd like to attend, go to retirementplanningedu.org. That's retirementplanningedu.org.
Retirement Education Foundation is a fiscally sponsored program of United Charitable, a registered 501c3 public charity. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any insurance discussed in this show is backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Retirement Education Foundation is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Retirement Education Foundation. This radio show is paid for by the Retirement Education Foundation.